On this channel, we very often get a chance to bring you the latest in cleaner, greener, safer and smarter cars. We get to test drive and review cars that have either just come to market or are on their way to market. And sometimes we get to put cars through their paces that have had a mild refresh, but are other than that the same as cars that we already know and love. And today we're doing the latter. We are taking out the 2020 Chevrolet Bolt EV. I was lucky enough to be invited onto the press launch event for the Bolt for the 2020 model year car. There have been a few changes, but this is most definitely a mild mid-cycle update. The Bolt has been on sale since the 2017 model year, so this is getting a mild refresh. There's been some tweaks to the battery pack. There's been a few other tweaks. And so it's worth bringing you just this little rundown of what to expect from Chevy's plug-in all-electric hatch. The first thing I should notice here is that the 2020 Bolt EV is very familiar for anyone who has ever sat behind the wheel of a Bolt before. Nothing has really changed. The seats are still the same. The air conditioning, the HVAC is still the same. The general touchscreen interface hasn't really changed. There are a few tweaks. So there's a new button that gives you access to the all-around camera system, if in fact you have the all-around camera system. Not everybody does. This is something that you get with the Premier. It's a package that you can add to the Premier. If you have the LT, you'll just have the standard rear view camera when you're in reverse. There's also a tweak to the monitor, the rear view monitor camera that is attached to the rear view mirror. I've never been a fan of it. This is better. It is improved. So you have a regular rear view mirror in standard mode, and then you flip a switch, which is a bit like the old dim switch that you used to get on manual mirrors, and then it switches to a camera feed. Today the weather has been pretty bad, and I will say that the mirror has had some issues in the camera mode. It mists up really quickly. The image is not particularly clear. It is clearer than the first generation mirror, and GM does say that there are now some buttons on the mirror that allow you to change the images, the quality of the contrast and the brightness, which is true. But like the first generation mirror, to use it, you have to change your focal lengths. You have to look at the mirror. You have to refocus on the mirror because it's a screen rather than a projection. So I like to keep it in the standard normal optical mode rather than the digital mode. So let's talk about the changes underneath the car. It still has the same motor. It still has the same power output. It still has the same rating. It still has the same 0 to 60 time. That's about 6.5 seconds in case you were interested. And overall, as I say, it doesn't feel very different to drive, but the battery pack has been upgraded. Gone is the 60 kilowatt-hour battery pack of the first generation of the Bolt EV, and in its place is a mildly refreshed 66 kilowatt-hour battery pack. It is that extra 6 kilowatt-hours that's responsible for the 20 or so extra miles that this car now gets. The EPA-approved range for the 2020 model year Bolt EV is 259 miles, which is an improvement on the 234 of the predecessor. The battery pack has had a complete reworking. It's an all-new cell chemistry made by LG Chem for General Motors in Michigan in the US. So this car is 100% homegrown if you're an American. The battery cells are made by LG Chem in the United States for use in this vehicle. And interestingly, while LG Chem does make battery cells for plenty of other auto manufacturers, we've been told that the chemistry and the cell design used for this car are unique to General Motors vehicles. So LG Chem is not using this cell chemistry or cell design in any other vehicle. It is only a GM thing. Well, other than that extra range, what else do you get? Well, of course, that 6 extra kilowatt hours gives you that extra buffer of the range, but we also see a reduction in the battery pack's internal resistance between the cells. What's internal resistance? Well, it's the resistance to the current that's flowing in the battery pack. The higher the internal resistance, generally, the harder it is to get power out of the battery pack. And in the case of the new 2020 Bolt EV battery pack, the lower internal resistance in the pack means it's much easier to get the energy out of the battery pack, and it should make for a longer life. It also means that the battery pack is less likely to suffer heating when the battery pack is in a low state of charge and you ask for a high current under acceleration or anything like that. Today we've been driving from Seattle to Portland. We drove this morning from Seattle out down to 101, down to the coast. We went to Astoria in Oregon, and we've just flipped back over at Kelso back into Washington State. We're driving into Portland now. The total mileage for this trip is supposed to be about 249 miles. At lunchtime, most people on our wave were into the 30, 40 or 50 miles remaining. Some people had, 80 miles, but we rocked up at lunchtime with 99 miles of range remaining, and we needed to have 92 miles before we reached our destination. I'm sure that part of that is just the fact that this is a car that I'm very familiar with, but we've traveled, we've got 35 miles left to travel, and we have a predicted 44 miles remaining in optimal mode, 36 in minimum mode, which is obviously the maximum, which is the key figure. If you are a Bolt owner, you'll know that minimum figure means that you will definitely, if your miles remaining and your minimum figure is higher than your miles remaining, you're going to get there. And the max is 52, an ideal situation. So we did have some terrible weather to deal with on the way from Seattle to Astoria. There was some torrential rain. We were driving up and down some pretty big hills. The tires are having to work extra hard to get all of that standing water out of the car. Kind of the worst case scenario for doing a long distance range test in a car like this. And I think that's why most people are going to stop and charge. But it looks like we are going to get there, having not plugged in since we left the hotel this morning. And I think that's a testament to the Bolt, and it's a testament to the engineering. But you do need to understand how these cars work, and you do need to have some level of skill to eke out that range in bad weather. And I would say that's true of any EV, as I'm sure most of you watching will appreciate. We are currently averaging 4.1 miles per kilowatt hour. I think in ideal situations, I could probably get that up to 5. And that would give us, assuming a total charge of 66 kilowatt hours that we could actually use, that would mean a range in excess of 330 miles, which is very impressive at the high end. But even in worst case scenarios, in poor conditions, this car does seem to be capable of achieving far longer range than the predecessor of the Bolt, the 2019 Bolt, than the predecessor of this, which is the 2020. Other than the battery pack and that lower internal cell resistance, you also see an improvement in charging. Now, GM has not changed the maximum power that you can put into the battery pack when charging. On paper, it's still 50 kilowatts. I assume that actually the reality is it can do 55 like the previous generation of Bolt battery packs could do. But what GM has told us, and I haven't been able to test this out, is that that lower internal resistance within the battery pack means that it can sustain a higher charge rate for a longer period before the charge needs to taper off to protect the battery pack. In my Bolt, which is a 2017, I normally see that tapering happen somewhere between 50 and 55, maybe 60% state of charge. I'm hoping in this car you can go a little bit further. So it'd be interesting to see if that's actually the case. Maybe we'll be able to put that to the test in the future if we get one of these on a week-long loan. So what else is there to tell you about this car? Well, really not a lot. Nothing else really has changed. There are a few styling differences on the outside of the vehicle. You now get a new lower grille styling, which matches the upper grille styling. So there's no difference between those, which is good. You also get a little external bump on the charge port door, which again is just a minor styling difference, really. And that's pretty much it. There's no changes to the seats, no changes to the rest of the interior. You still get the OnStar, you still get the connectivity if you wish to have it. In terms of driving, nothing really feels different. The torque steer is still there. The traction control is still the same. It's very comfortable riding. I don't feel like I've been behind the wheel a huge amount or been traveling for a lot today. It's a pretty comfortable, calm ride. The interior cabin is nice and quiet. There's not a huge amount of noise, maybe a little bit. But, you know, for what you get, it's a very competent little car. Which brings me to price. The pricing for the 2020 model year Bolt EV, despite having that larger 66 kilowatt hour battery pack, is exactly the same as it was for the 2019 model year car. So that means if you're in the market for a Bolt EV, you should be able to get a 2019 with a significant discount on price, because the dealer doesn't want to sell you, doesn't want to have those older Bolts sitting on the lot, so they will sell you those Bolts just to get them off the lot so they can get the 2020s in. Should you buy a 19 or a 20? Well, it's a little bit up in the air at the moment, assuming the battery longevity is the same or slightly better in the 2020. If you're buying this for a long-term car, you may want to buy the 2020. If you just are leasing, you might be just good with a 2019. Obviously, if you want to make those longer distance trips and you do rapid charge regularly, and those changes in charge curve and also that extra little bit, 20 miles or so of range, you probably do want the 2020. But other than that, it's pretty much the same car. Would I buy one? Well, I'm currently really happy with my 2017. I wouldn't upgrade. If you have a 2017, 18 or 19, I wouldn't upgrade to a 2020 unless you're turning in your lease and you decide you want a new car. But what's really exciting is GM is starting to talk up some of the new cars that it's working on. It is promising us a new car very shortly. Yesterday at a presentation, we were told it's not just going to be Chevrolet, it's going to be other brands too, which does hint that we're going to see a high performance, maybe electric luxury car. We might see some other models come in as well from the GM brand. We do know that there is an SUV variant of this car on the way. We don't know when it's going to hit, but I would say pretty soon. So again, if you want slightly more space, that might be worth waiting for. So that's it. If you liked this video, please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. And if you want to support us, you can do so by going to Patreon and making a donation. From $1 a month, it really does help. You can also send us a coffee or coffees through Ko-fi, and you can visit our swag store and buy some merch. I'll be back soon with more content for you all to enjoy. I'm actually going to pick up my own personal Chevrolet Bolt later on today. It has been fixed. There will be a video coming on that. But until then, thanks for joining me. Keep evolving.